Today we have another diesel heater. I know, done a few of them, but what I'm trying to do is give you a range from like really budget to medium price to a high price units so that you can compare and see what the differences are. Why would you want one over the other? Maybe you're just on a tight budget. You want something that's really budget friendly. What are the downsides of it going to be? That type of thing. So today we have the WIPPRO all-in-one diesel heater. Now, according to the tag here, it is an 8 kilowatt model. It says so right here on the tag. We'll see about that. And it has been cold. This morning it was 10 degrees here. And I set up the rooftop tent, fired up the heater to see what it would do. And, you know, how loud is it? All that good stuff. Now, it does come with a little wireless remote. There is no app for this one. And this sells on Amazon for $229. So it's kind of on the lower range of things, and has an AC power port to it, has a DC power plug. It comes with really basic hoses like most of them do, kind of that cardboard style hose. I actually have that inside of here, and then I have this 4-inch hose clamped to that to run into the tent. If I tried to run a 3-inch hose, which is the output size on here, into the tent, I would probably get a overheating problem. Super, super common on diesel heaters. The controls, very, very simple. Just hit the power one to start it up. It's going to fire up and start going, so we'll be able to hear kind of what the sound of it is and all that. And it has a 1.2 gallon or 6, I'm going to double check my facts here. A 1.5 gallon tank on it, which is 6 liters. Now, let's talk about some performance. Okay. Now, they say it's 8 kilowatt. I got to doubt that for a couple of reasons. One, the size is very small. The inputs and outputs are only 3-inch, and it really didn't put out power like an 8 kilowatt, nor did it go through fuel like an 8 kilowatt. So a lot of ones that claim are 8 kilowatts are actually 5 kilowatt. And I have a feeling that that's the same here because I just didn't seem to get what I would expect out of an 8 kilowatt unit. But let's talk about, did it actually work? I mean, we started at 10 degrees Fahrenheit this morning. And that was at 4:15 this morning. Talk about taking one for the team for you guys. I got up at 4 o'clock this morning to start this test. So it was 10.2 degrees. In an hour, it was in the tent, it was 45.2 degrees, and I had been running it on level 3. So at that point, I bumped it up to level 5. 30 minutes later, it was up to 55 degrees. So now that's getting pretty good. That's definitely warm enough to be comfortable in a sleeping bag, a basic quilt or something. 55 degrees is pretty comfortable. At 6 o'clock, it had gone up to 57 degrees. By 6:15, it was 57.8. Now we're starting to get comfy. I keep my house at 60 degrees. So if I get anywhere close to that, give or take, I'm going to be super happy. At 6:22, 57.8 degrees, I bumped it up from 5 to 6. That started really putting it out. Oh, and we'll talk about the sound level on here. So 8 minutes later, it started going up to 58. And 30 minutes later, it was at 60.3. 30 minutes later from that, at 7:30, it was at 63 degrees. And I dropped it down to level 5. And at 8:15, it was still 18 degrees outside, and it was 67 in the tent. So had I started at a 5 or a 6 on here, it would have definitely warmed the tent up to close to 60 degrees within 90 minutes or 2 hours. So not horrible performance, but not stellar performance. Then at 840, I dropped it back down to 3 just to do a fuel test to see how much we were going to fuel we were going to use over 8 hours. So the good news is, even though it was 15 degrees outside, it got the tent up to 60 degrees. And this is not some crazy hyper insulated tent. This is not a good insulated tent, in my opinion. This is the Tough Stuff Overland Alpine 61. They're going to come out with some insulation panels for it, but I don't have them now. So to be able to get a tent up to 60 degrees, quite good. So now we're starting to get this thing cranked up here. The blower on here, pretty loud. The exhaust is fairly loud. When it is in full operation, it is putting out 64 decibels. Not crazy loud, but certainly there's quieter units available. The main thing is the fuel pump. I'm guessing you can hear that. It's kind of loud. Once it's in full operation, which will take here another minute or so, and you're way back in the tent, because I put my feet on this side, my head's on the other side. It's not horrible. I can hear it, but it's not ridiculously horrible like some other units. Still, for what I've heard, some other YouTubers out there saying that this thing was whisper quiet, it's not. This thing has a very distinct noise on it. Now, I'm going to go to the other side so I can take a look over here. There is a fuel gauge over on this side, goes up to 8 liters. I started it at the 8 liter point and at 8 hours of runtime. And I told you, some of that was running it up to level 6, which is 60% of its power. And over 8 hours, I used 2.3 liters. So had I filled this up, I'd had it filled up at 8 liters, I could have got 3 nights out of it on 1 tank of fuel. So pretty efficient on the fuel. Couple things that I wish would be improved on here. One, the style of fuel cap, very standard on most of the units out there. These are prone to leak if it's bouncing around in the back of the trailer or the back of the Jeep. They will leak out of the vent hole. So we usually put a piece of tape over it, or we put plastic down and then tighten it down. So I wish this, I wish they all came with a more standard, like automotive style cap. The control panel sits on top. Now, not that that's a major problem by any stretch, but it does, like in my case, having it up here makes it pretty difficult to read. It has to be pretty dark out for me to be able to read the screen. And not having an app, there was a few points that I was having a lot of difficulty in seeing what level I had it set at. So I wish that was on the side, like most units, just a little easier to cover and see. But more importantly, I wish it had an app. Most all the units out there have apps these days. So for one to not have an app, that's kind of a bummer, right? I don't care about a thermostat mode. That's not going to work inside the tent. We do have the wireless remote, and that works just fine. And then we have the standard, super cheap, just straight through muffler that comes with this. Not a huge fan of those because honestly, they don't do anything. You can take it off, you're really not going to hear much of a difference. I like the nicer one that comes with the LF Bros N2 Pro. Fantastic muffler on there. So here, I'm going to get down here. So we are hearing quite a bit of exhaust sound, and we're hearing the ticking sound on here. Aside from that, the build quality on this, super nice. I mean, these handles fold down, they're super stout. It's put together with screws, so if you do need to service it or you want to do some upgrades on it, you can pretty easily do that. So not too bad there. The hoses, almost useless. Unless you are running this in a garage, a shed, something like that, the hoses are just not going to be long enough, and they're non-insulated hoses. I don't know. I'm kind of tossed up on that, because not everyone who buys a diesel heater needs a long hose to run it into a rooftop tent. We do, so it's just one of those things that, well, that's my use case, therefore I need to supply the accessories to make it work for me. The hoses that it comes with are going to be fine for the other people. When you're running in a garage or shed, that's something like that. That's going to be fine. You know, if you're running in a ground tent and you can get it close enough and you can just put that hose right in, that's going to be fine. So those types of applications, I think the hoses that come with it are going to work perfectly fine. For a rooftop tent, you're going to want to upgrade, and you're going to want to use 4-inch hoses to go up like that. Now, since we didn't use air recirculating like we've done on some of the other ones, I was a little curious about how that was going to work, but we did get the tent up to temperature pretty easily, and it all worked. So, mostly happy with it. The fuel pump noise, that's a negative. No app, that's a negative. The exhaust muffler, well, it's not a positive, but it's standard. They pretty much all come that way. Is it an 8 kilowatt unit? Doesn't feel like it. You know, I think it would put out a lot more heat if it was an 8 kilowatt, and it would have burned through more fuel. So I'm questioning that a little bit. But is this a good unit for you? Well, you decide. I've told you the pros, I've told you the cons, and the price is $229. So it's not super expensive. It's not one of the dirt cheap ones that, you know, feel like they're going to fall apart as soon as you use it. It's now running, you know, in its standard mode. We're at we were running it. That was on a level 4. If I drop it down to level 2, you'll hear the blower wind down a little bit, but it's probably going to make the pump a little more pronounced. So that's just how they work, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. Okay, it's going to shut down, take a couple minutes for it to go through its cool down cycle, and then it'll be ready to put away. So decide for yourself. Is this the price point, feature, you know, middle ground that you might be looking for? It's not a $600 unit. It's not a $100 unit. It's that $229. There could be things that could be improved on it, but not a bad unit overall. So thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Kerry. It's cold out here. I am so cold. Be safe out there. We'll see you on the trails.